Welcome, dear students. I will talk about English in the law courts of 14th century. I hope and expect that after completing this session, you will be able to understand about the rise of English in the law courts of the 14th century and what were the circumstances or reasons that led towards that rise. Well, in the 14th century, all the learned of English or the English people or of the land, England, they were the people who knew both French and English. However, there was a clear shift of use of English in everyday language. The people who belonged to the legal profession and those who belonged to the church, they were also the people who came in the category of the learned people. And again, they knew French, but alongside, in their everyday conversations, they used to use English. French was the language of the courts, language of the lawyers, and law courts down to 1362. People of church also, till this point, commonly spoke French. For religious conversations in the monasteries of St. Augustine at Canterbury and St. Peter at Westminster, the language that was being used was French. That is why we find examples of Chaucer's Prioress from the Canterbury Tales, one of the most popular Middle English pieces of literature. We find that the prioress spoke French, though she told her tale to the Canterbury pilgrims in English. So you can understand how both the languages, they were going side by side and they were, living lives together. However, the clerks of the younger generation seem to have been losing their command of the language. Now, my dear students, this is a very significant feature. The older people, the people who belonged to the older generation, the people who were more conservative, the people who were more traditional, both in the court and in the clergy, they would speak French. But the younger people, the less conservative people, the less traditional people, the more progressive people, they used to use English. French, as a matter of fact, was known to the government officials as well, so it was used for official purposes anyways. French was also the language of the parliament, it was the language of local administration, and it was used for business transactions and all the transactions that were made by the town councils and the guilds. All these processes that were on the formal administrative level, they were taking place in French. However, by this century, we started seeing the scattered instances of the intrusion of English into all this. So, for example, when Edward III called a parliament in 1337 for advice on prosecuting his claim to the throne of France, it is very, very interesting for us to know that the lawyer who addressed the congregation, he spoke in English. Although French was still the usual language of the parliament and, of course, of the court at that time. In 1362, Chancellor opened Parliament for the first time with a speech in English. So, for the students of the history of English language, this is a significant date that tells about the status and the position of English at that particular time. Now, English starts appearing in the acts of towns and in guilds, the business organizations. And, in 1388, Parliament required all the guilds to submit a report in English language. This worked as a step to restore English language. Many more steps were taken to restore English. Now, for a fact, since long, French had been the language of all the legal proceedings that were taking place in the court. But it was in 1356 that the mayor and the aldermen of London ordered that the proceedings of Sheriff's Court of London and Middlesex be in English language. So this was a major change in the language of the courts that occurred or that happened. Here, what I'm showing you is a text, my dear students, that is an approval of the Parliament. 6 years later, this approval was given. I would just read it for you and point out certain things. The approval says, because it is often showed, all right, I would focus on the pronunciation of certain words as of Middle English. However, generally I would go for the modern English pronunciation. Because it is often showed to the king by the prelates, dukes, earls, barons, and all the commonalty. So, from here to here, all the people of the nobility, of the great mischiefs which have happened to divers of the realm, because the laws, customs, and statutes, these are the things that are important, of this realm be not commonly known in the same realm. So, what is being pointed out is that because all the laws and the customs were given in French language, many of people did not understand them. That led towards what this approval says, mischiefs. For that, they pleaded, showed, and judged in the French language. So, all the processes of pleading, of showing, of judging, they happened in French language, which is much unknown in the said realm, so that the people which do implead or be impleaded in the king's court and in the courts of others have no knowledge or understanding of that which is said for them or against them by their sergeants or other pleaders. So, what is being said is that the common people in the court would not know what is being talked about, what is being talked in favor of them or against them, though the people, the lawyers, etc. in the court would, of course, know that, because they know French more than the common people. The decision continues, the king desiring the good governance and tranquility of his people. So, what is the purpose of this change? Good governance and tranquility. Peacefulness for people, and to put out the issue the harms and mischiefs which do or may happen in this behalf by the occasions aforesaid. And then, towards the end of this, what is said is, in the courts and places of any other lords whatsoever within the realm shall be pleaded, showed, defended, answered, debated, and judged in what? In English language. Now, what is interesting here for us is, simply the Parliament could have said, hereafter all the lawsuits shall be conducted in English language. This much only. But a very long decision was given, and in a very frank way, the reasons were given that French is unknown to the said realm, people belonging to this domain or this realm of life. And my dear students, as customs die hard, so, this decision that was approved, of course, it could not be applied fully in one go or at once. However, it was the official recognition of the English language with reference to the law courts of the Middle English times.